Welcome to the Win, Make, Give podcast. This is Ben Kinney, right in the middle beginning, I guess, of season 2, which Chad Himes is about
winning.
And sometimes Bob's it's also about
losing.
I
think the losing side?
Because Bob is a sir. Well, ladies and gentlemen, that's not true. Chad Himes and Bob Stewart are always winning. They're always winning. Today, we're going to talk about winning through purpose. Winning through purpose. Now, kind of specifically, I'm thinking about how do we get more out of our employees, more out of ourselves for our business or our organizations. And I want to share a little piece of an article that I read, and here goes my best late night love songs radio host voice.
Very white, ladies and gentlemen.
98.9 smooth jazz coming to you all night long with every love song you could ever imagine.
I see you practice this a lot, like what, in your teen years?
Well, that was the only radio station that played. Like it was like smooth jazz at the furniture store that I worked at. It was like late night love songs every night. Anyway, back to the article at hand. We all need a sense of purpose in our lives, but when we can't find one, it can leave us lifeless and unmotivated. Think about that sentence, Chad. Like if we're getting this feeling of being unmotivated, which I know all of us in this room have been at some point in our lives.
Yep.
Or even that feeling of lifelessness, maybe it's because we don't have a clear sense of purpose.
Absolutely.
Now, I've been on these journeys throughout my life to find joy and happiness and success. And in this article, the next sentence says, our daily pursuit of money and respect doesn't correlate well with our sense of purpose. Most successful CEOs, still reading the article, said, I've made a lot of money and my business has done well, but I still feel lost. What is the point of all this? End quote from the article. I made a lot of money, I'm successful, whatever that might be, and I still feel lost. If you're listening to this podcast and you've ever felt lost, just yell out an amen or a hallelujah or a high five to somebody.
Amen.
Hallelujah.
Yeah, we've thought that the new house or the new car or a certain amount of money or the new job or the new weight or the new pant size or dress size, Bob, that any of those different types of things would actually give us joy. And really, in my career, I've found that it hasn't. So I'm going to go back to the article. It says, if this is you, try reflecting on who you're trying to serve. It's a powerful way to rekindle a fading sense of purpose. CEOs are often so focused on financial performance that they don't make the time to speak directly with their customers or even coach their team. And it's this disconnect with the human impact that is often the cause of feeling lost. Now, last piece of this article. This has led to a universal insight that's both enlightening and practical. Here's the quote. Our ultimate sense of purpose comes from helping other people. It might sound obvious, yet it's surprisingly easy to forget. When you lose sight of the people you serve, you lose your sense of purpose, as well as the energy and motivation that comes with it. If I go back in my own history, the number one thing that allowed me to break through my ceiling was hiring Jolene, my first assistant, because no longer it was about me. If I didn't do something, I was letting her down.
Right.
And my number two was the next person that I hired and so on. Yep. And I'm sure parents, especially like single parents, have that feeling of they push through hard things and hard times because they actually don't have a choice. They know that they have to go take care of.
I know that's what drove me for years when I was basically a single parent for Simone. You know, Ben, some of these we work a long time, and then some days you are just hit by something that you want to come in here and talk about. And you came flying into the studio and you said, guys, I want to talk about this article about purpose. And I took 10 seconds while you were pulling up the article to pull up some quotes about purpose. And it's interesting because the first one that came up to me was from Albert Schweitzer, which says, the purpose of human life is to serve and to show compassion and the will to help others. Just what you're saying right there, that if we can actually remember what that true purpose is that we're here for, that's going to help us with challenge. It's never the dollars.
Yeah, maybe it'll get it through us. Oh, well, let me tell you all why this topic is at the front of my mind. I reread a book that I had read way in my past that maybe you gentlemen have read. I haven't asked you guys. Man's Search for Meaning by Viktor Frankl.
Viktor Frankl.
Yeah.
You read it?
Yeah. It's been a while, but yeah.
So this book, which I highly recommend, struck me in many ways. It's a short read. I mean, it's a couple hours max, and it's 3 parts. But the first part, Bob, if you remember, is telling the story of Victor being where?
I don't remember. It's a parable, right? Like
It's the story of Victor, who was a successful doctor, therapist, psychotherapist, who got gathered up by the Nazis and put into a concentration camp. And the very first day, he shows up at Auschwitz, of all the worst places in the world, and he's stripped of his clothing, his hair, his belongings, and he is lined up in a line with everyone else who is naked, and they are shaved, all their body, everything. And he kind of sat back and says, I realize that everything I thought that made me is now gone, and it actually didn't make me at all. He goes on to talk about the atrocities that happened in those concentration camps, and they're horrible and they're horrid, and it's a really hard book to read. And he makes a few other statements in there, and then I have a kind of a why are we talking about this correlation. He said, you know, a lot of people were murdered by the Germans during this time, right? The obvious ones. He said, but a lot of other people died. And his observation was a vast majority of the people that died didn't die from starvation or injury. They gave up. They gave up hope. Well, Victor survives a long period of time in the concentration camps. And he believed that he was able to survive because he found meaning in life, which to me is another word for
Purpose.
the whole thing that we're talking about today, ladies and gentlemen, purpose. He said, in fact, there are 3 ways to find meaning in life: through work, through love, and through suffering. So Victor makes it out of the concentration camps, and one of his goals was to rewrite his manuscript that he had written prior to getting put into the camp, which was taken away from him and destroyed. But he went on to continue his profession of helping people through some of their toughest times as a psychologist.
Wow.
And everybody in this room has spent enough time with psychologists and therapists to know that that it's very much a needed profession. Not to throw us all under the bus.
Tuesdays at 5:00.
Yeah, mine's Tuesdays at 10:15. So there is this point in the book where he says, I'm often confronted with individuals who come in so depressed that they're suicidal and they believe that they have no reason to live and they want to take their life. He says, so I often start with one question. And this is a hard thing to say, but he says, I start with the question, why don't you just kill yourself right now, tonight, today, tomorrow? Why don't you just do it? And these people who believe that they had nothing left, usually have an answer to why not, right?
Can't leave my kids.
It's usually someone too, right?
I'm not going to leave my spouse.
Right.
Or I'm not going to leave my kids.
Wouldn't do that to my family.
Or I have something left in my life still to do. And I think the brilliance in that conversation is that when you're feeling lost and you're feeling hopeless and you feel like you literally have no purpose, maybe we should ask ourselves a really tough question, because maybe there is a purpose. Because they left that meeting understanding that there was a reason to live. They did have purpose. And they had to redirect their emotions and their energies into that purpose. So Victor said, he who has a why to live can bear almost anyhow. He who has a why to live can bear almost anyhow. Any thoughts on that, gentlemen?
Lots of thoughts on that. We've talked about that in other words over time, many times, right? The how will be found when you have a why that's big enough, right? Nothing's going to stop you. Nothing's going to stand in your way. We've all seen, everybody has gone through that one moment. The challenge is we achieve what it is and what comes next. We survive this. We say, I have the why of making it through this month, paying the bill. And then we do everything we have to do. And then we relax. We've achieved that purpose. We check it off. We climb the mountain. We check it off. The challenge that comes is making sure we have a why that's big enough to keep us going. And that's where people come into it, not just things.
Bob, what's going through your mind?
For me, that I have like this crystal experience in professionally anyway, that is in many ways a big driver of my why. And Ben, you and I, we used to travel around the country and we did these trainings, and we would go on stage. We'd basically kind of present your business and motivate people and share with them how they could grow a bigger business. And we'd done a ton of these things. And, it was very common afterwards that people would come up to you, both of us, right? There'd be a line of people and thanks so much. This was amazing. This was awesome. And you get into a routine there where you're like, oh yeah, you bet. And I had a guy, Greg Nino. He still has that business in Houston, Texas. And he came up to me after one of those things and he said, hey man, I just want to thank you. Thanks for everything you guys have done. This actually gets me choked up. And I was in robot mode, right, Ben? I'm like, yeah, absolutely, Greg, man. So glad you could come join us. And he grabbed me by the shoulders, and he's a big man. He's 6'5", 6'4". He's big, and he grabbed me by the shoulders, and he kind of like made me look at him, and he goes, "No, I'm serious. Like the stuff that I've learned from you has put food on the table for my kids," and it like shook me to my core. I'd never really thought before that moment, really, that like what we did like helped put food on people's tables. We were young, we were in our early 30s or late 20s, and I was like, we were just, we were making money and we were doing our thing, and we thought it was cool to get out and share, but that like shook me to my core. And I mean, almost from that moment, I realized like, wow, we have a purpose here. Like we're actually helping people, like not only delivering the dream of home ownership, but like putting food on the table for their kids. And, this was during the recession, Ben, 2008, right? 2009. Like there was a lot of people that were hurting, but this guy came up and it really changed me. Like that professionally, I feel like I've had a purpose ever since that moment.
Wow.
It's not just business too, because it's health, it's relation, it's all those things that we can find that. I had my situation slightly different, but my health was out of control. My health was horrible. And I had made a bet to run in a marathon. I told some guys I could do it. And there was money on the table. There was pride on the table. There were all those, and none of those motivated me to actually do it. They weren't enough of a purpose to go run it. That was just me talking my mouth and shooting my mouth off in front of some people. And okay, so I'm going to lose some money. And it wasn't until my daughter looked at me when I was failing running one day on the treadmill. And my daughter just looked at me and said, "Daddy, you can do anything you put your mind to." And all she did was echo my words. And now I had purpose for why I had to run this marathon, because I had told her, you can do anything you put your mind to. And here she was using my own words back at me. What am I going to do? Tell my daughter, no, Daddy was lying, or that only applies to you, not me? It immediately gave purpose because there was someone attached to it that I was doing it for.
Victor said, without hope, meaning a future, death will come soon. This is an excerpt from the book. The prisoner who lost faith in the future, his future, was doomed. With his loss of belief in the future, he also lost his spiritual hold. He let himself decline and became subject to mental and physical decay. I highly recommend that you take the time to read Man's Search for Meaning. He will talk to you about the purpose and meaning of suffering, that the human body, the human mind is strong, and it can get used to almost anything. Reminds me of the David Goggins conversation where he said that the mind tells you that to give up when at 40%,
Right.
when you still have 60% left to give. So I got Bob crying, Chad opening up. I'm just trying to have a conversation about purpose. Let's bring it back to our business or our careers, our leadership, and go back to that original article that said our ultimate sense of purpose comes from helping other people. I don't know how individual producers who has no one left to no one around them that relies on them continues to hit the drum and march forward. I don't know. I don't think I could do it. Right? I would give up on myself if nobody was watching.
Yep.
Just the way I'm wired. Right? I don't give up on other people. So maybe if you're sitting in a tough spot, you need to sit back and ask yourself, who actually relies on me right now? Who would really be harmed if I wasn't given 100%?
Well, you've said this before, Ben, and if people were the people that are most important to you, the people that did rely on you, if they were over your shoulder during a day of work, would they be impressed or would they be depressed?
Yep.
Right. And if we can remember who we're doing it for, it'll help us power through those moments.
In Bob's, as Bob's wiping the tears from his face, it's easy for the head of a company who's so passionate about the widget that they built or the rocket they've designed or the software that's been developed, for them to understand purpose. I think a real challenge in an organization is to take what they've done and translate it into their employees so that we can motivate our teams and the people that work in our businesses so they understand that we don't sell software. We help people pay their mortgage, feed their kids, and buy shoes, right? That what we do is actually extremely important. In fact, there's a story of a janitor that was interviewed, and I don't remember what the business, but let's say SpaceX or whatever, NASA, whatever it was. And the janitor was asked, "What do you do?" And he was the janitor at NASA. I'm screwing the story up. And he said, "I'm helping putting somebody on the moon." Like he had a clear correlation between what he was doing, right? That he was a small part, even if it was cleaning the buildings and the bathrooms and all that sort of stuff. And that kind of shook me because my mom was a janitor at a high school, and you know what was she doing? She was helping kids get through education and start the rest of their lives. And I've heard from people from time to time that said, "I didn't know you back then, but I knew your mom. She was the janitor when I was a junior or senior," or whatever that might be. Like, how do you get that message down to our employees and our staff so that they believe that they're also putting somebody on the moon?
I think it's about storytelling. Like, I feel like there's a lot of power in making sure that, you know, like I think about our companies, man, our employees sit there all day, they get beat up. They're, you know, some of our support teams, right? Like you get into the grind of working away and you forget like why you even do this. I think that like, we talked about triangulation in a recent episode, and there's this idea that like, you know, Ben, you know what our customers are doing and the successes they're having and what it means to them. But our support people only see all the problems and it's that like making sure that we close the loop and let everybody know, like, look, I want to share with you guys a story of a lady that, you know, these stories are so powerful, I think. But not everybody hears them, right? They're down in the trenches all day long getting dumped on. And so I think there's a lot of power in storytelling and really letting, you know, the people know.
I don't want to get our Star Wars geeks too excited because I think every company actually needs a CPO, not C3PO, just a CPO on this, right? And they need a chief purpose officer because too many chief executive officers or operating officers, they're forgetting to bring that purpose and remember to share that message. As Bob's saying, those stories, they're not getting through all the channels. I think it would be interesting for someone to think about how can their organization, whether they're one person, whether it's their family, whatever it is, but how can someone take the title of CPO around your organization?
I love that. I'm going to go back to this original article. It says we all need a higher purpose. You don't need to work at a social venture, a nonprofit, a healthcare company to find purpose in your work. You just need to understand how you help real people in meaningful ways. The art of building a purpose-driven company is to frame day-to-day work in terms of who it actually serves and what value it brings them. Reframing the objectives and the tasks and initiatives in underline, bold, human terms can be incredibly insightful. If you're struggling to find meaning in your work, reflect on who you're serving and why. And if you have employees or business partners, etc., help them understand why we do what we do and how important that actual job is.
I mean, I feel like I owe this Greg Dino guy, like, I need to send this guy something. Like that moment for me, I've never once. Now, look, I have these problems in my personal life, right? Like I maybe struggle for meaning there and purpose there, right? And that's been a little bit more elusive to me. But professionally, that moment like crystallized for me exactly why we do what we do. And it was a very human moment, right? It was this person, like he connected the dots for me, like right there, like a punch in the face. Now, personally, right, that's maybe a harder find for many of us.
I'm going to summarize this up in a few key points. Number one, purpose retains your employees. If they feel like there's purpose to what they do every single day, they're going to keep coming even when the going gets tough. Number two, purpose makes it easier to recruit and attract talent. There's generations of people that have been working for these corporate soul-sucking companies that do not fully care about the people, and they realize that they're employee number 46147, right? And that's it. And they are looking for a place to belong that has purpose. Purpose creates culture, pride, and employee engagement. It gets people to rally, which has to be hard in times of a pandemic when there's employees that work in our companies that we've never seen face to face because we don't get together face to face, right? Purpose-driven companies create employees that are brand ambassadors, people that walk around wearing the t-shirt and the hat and telling people what we do, but it also creates customers that walk around and promote who we are and what we do. Now, we own a large software company, and we do a massive amount of revenue, and we bring in a massive amount of customers. People wouldn't believe in 2020 that we spent less than $3,000 a month in marketing dollars to bring in who we have at our company, because our customers became our brand ambassadors and our employees became our promoters. And Bob, Chad, and myself, we got in front of the world and started teaching people how to survive the pandemic and how to get their business going and how to reduce expenses. And it grew. The company blew up. It doubled in one of the worst years that anybody could ever imagine. Now, in order to have purpose, it can't be we're going to go to Mars. That's exciting. It needs to be something quicker. How do we have purpose in what we do every hour, every day, every week, every month, and every year? Not just what we're planning to do in 10 years or 15 years, because you can lose sight of that. The gist of it is that we want you to win with purpose. Read Man's Search for Meaning. Check our show notes and read a couple of the articles that we referenced today and see what you could do to spread the word purpose around your organization, your company, or your department, and get things going, right, Chad?
Purpose is about people and who we're doing it for. You, the audience, you're the purpose of Win, Make, Give podcast. And in season 2, we're also donating for every listen that you give to someone, which is part of our purpose. So we hope you'll share this episode with as many as possible. And as we wrap it up, we'll share with you David McKay's quote, which says, "Find a purpose in life so big, it will challenge every capacity to be at your best." Join us in our Facebook group, share the podcast. Don't forget to give us a rating and a review. And until the next time, do good.